welcome to Live Interactive English. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike.
And I'm Sam.
And we are back with day 2 of our look at the Tower of Babel. Well, we're going to tell the story of the Tower of Babel. We can't actually have a look at the Tower of Babel. We can't see this thing because it's not there anymore.
No.
It's a story from the Bible, and unless someone out there has a time machine, we'll never really be able to know if it's real or not, and certainly not to see it. But it is an ancient story about an ancient tower, and there aren't a lot of ancient towers anymore, are they? I mean,
no.
Towers are tall and they can fall over in earthquakes. I mean, the pyramids are still there. Mm-hmm. They're really old, but those aren't towers. Those are pyramids, kind of 3D triangles. We do have towers though today, right? They're just not ancient.
Yeah, I think the oldest tower that I can think of, but
Yes.
now that I say this, now I'm not sure if it's older than well, anyway, the one I'm thinking of is the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so I know that that's fairly old.
It's like 500 years, 600 years.
Yeah, and even in that case, in that one that's still there, it is already leaning. So
True.
you can see that even though it's only, I say only about 500 or 600 years old, because in the history of the world and culture, that's fairly young.
It's a young tower.
Yes, and
to be fair, I think it was leaning like soon after it was built.
Okay.
It's kind of always been leaning.
Yeah.
Just don't hire the guys who built it.
True, and so that's the only one like standalone tower I can think of.
That's a
but I
good old
know
one,
there's
though.
some towers that are attached to castles and things like
Sure,
that.
sure.
But not something so impressive as what the Tower of Babel might have been.
No, and nothing as tall as the pyramids, which are, not towers, but still pretty big and high. But the modern world has towers. We have many modern towers.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you can go to Tokyo, the Tokyo Sky Tower, or I think it's called the Sky Tree, but that's a tower. I've been there. The, what's the one in Paris? The Eiffel Tower, of course. That's definitely a tower, and it's definitely there, but it's not ancient. No. And we have a lot of skyscrapers, like tall buildings, Taipei 101, the Burj Khalifa, I believe, in Dubai. And, we might even throw the Empire State Building or something like that in New York in there. But not the Tower of Babel. It's not around, but the story is still in our Bible, and it is an interesting story about long ago. So let's get back to it. When we left, the people who built the tower were really happy, really proud of themselves, but God was not happy with them, and that can often lead to bad things. So let's see what goes on with the Tower of Babel.
Before long, God put an end to the plans of the people of Shinar. Suddenly, as the workers were building, they could no longer understand one another. One person would speak, but the others would find his language unfamiliar. God took action by taking away their common language. The city fell into confusion as people tried to find others who spoke the same language, but it was too late. They were no longer able to complete the tower, so they scattered across the earth as God wished. The scattered groups took their new languages with them and formed new nations with their own unique cultures.
All right, so we are in day 2 of the Tower of Babel. We've left off where they are building this tower, and it is looking pretty good, and they're feeling good about themselves. But one of the things that we kind of learn in the Bible is God doesn't really want you to be too prideful or full of pride. He wants you to stay humble and remember that he is kind of in charge and you're still just a person.
I see. And remember, when they were building this tower, things were pretty good. All of these people came from Noah and his family. They all spoke the same language, had the same culture, and they built the tower because they were proud of themselves and they wanted all the people to stay there in that land, in the land of Shinar. So it says, before long, God put an end to the plans of the people of Shinar. Oh, okay, that's not good for the people of Shinar. God is not happy with them, so he's gonna kind of mess with them. And what did he do? Well, suddenly confusion was everywhere. It says suddenly, as the workers were building, they could no longer understand one another. So I guess they were speaking one language before, but now all of a sudden, everyone is speaking different languages. And I mean, that would make things hard. They didn't have Google Translate or anything like that. They didn't have wonderful language programs like ours to teach people different languages. So suddenly no one can understand. And imagine trying to build a tower and you can't understand what your boss is saying. The math doesn't work for other people. Suddenly it is just chaos and confusion. And of course, this would be really, really bad, difficult, and probably scary all of a sudden.
I feel like it would be really terrifying because I don't think these people would even have any idea of what another language could be since they've all been in one area with one language for so long. They'd just be like, why can't I talk? Why can't you talk? And now everybody's like panicking.
Ting budong.
Yeah, right?
Je ne comprends pas. No habla inglés. Suddenly, yes, I can't understand what you're saying.
That would be terrifying, I feel like. And it says one person would speak, but the others would find his language unfamiliar. So you're trying to talk and they're looking at you like you're crazy and you're like, hey, we've been friends for 30 years. Why can't you understand me anymore? And well, it says, God took action by taking away their common language. So they all had one language before, and now there's many languages out there, and everybody's kind of like, what's going on?
Yes.
Well, that would be quite confusing.
That is quite fiendish of God to suddenly stop people from understanding common daily conversation and language. Well, someone we do understand and will always understand because she's so wonderful is our teacher, Hanny.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny， 今天要继续读巴别塔的故事。人们努力建造一座可达天际的高塔，这个塔越建越高，人们也越来越骄傲。不久，上帝就终结了他们的计划。那突然间，人们不再能够彼此理解，发现对方的语言很陌生，因为上帝他采取行动夺走了他们共同的语言。Mike 老师说，这就会造成了混乱的局面。老师用到 chaos，chaos 这个名词就表示混乱。老师还有用到 fiendish 来描述上帝的作为，它是拼作 fiendish。fiendish 它是形容恶魔般的或残忍的或刁钻的棘手的。那这边还有两个重点，第一个重点是 end 当名词可以表达终止尽头，我们可以用 put an end 或者是 bring an end to something 表达使什么终止结束，或者是为什么来画下句点。举例来说， The accident nearly put an end to his career. 那场意外事故差点导致他的职业生涯终止。那第二个重点是 find 加受词加受词补语，表示发现点点点处于某种状态。那动词 find 在这边表示发现发掘，受词的后面要接补语来说明它受词的状态。那这个补语就可以用形容词、现在分词 VING 或是过去分词 PP。VING 它是表达主动或正在进行的动作， PP 是表达被动或已完成的动作。我们造两个例句。He found the door unlocked. 他发现门没锁。那这时候受词补语就是用过去分词 unlocked. They found paparazzi waiting outside their house. 他们发现狗仔队在他们家外面等着。那这时候受词补语就是用现在分词 waiting. 好，那我们接着回到课文中。
All right, we are back. So confusion reigns in the land of Shinar. Everyone is like, blah, 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 I don't understand, blah, 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 I don't understand. No one understands what's going on. Work on the tower, I guess, would suddenly come to an end, because how can you build a big thing when all the workers and everyone doesn't understand each other? And just imagine how that would affect every other part of life. So it says the city fell into confusion as people tried to find others who spoke the same language. So instead of having one language, maybe if there's 1 million people in the city, there's 1 million languages. Parents couldn't understand their children. Cats couldn't understand dogs. It was absolutely terrible. So they were trying to find people who spoke the same language, but it was too late. So no one could understand everyone. Everyone's speaking different languages. It was absolutely terrible, and it led to confusion. Confusion is when there is a lot of stuff going on, but no one understands what is happening. You could imagine if you're in a building and suddenly there's an earthquake. Everyone's running around. What do we do? What do we do? We go outside. No, we should stay inside. We should open the windows. We should hide under a table. There is confusion. Or if you're trying to talk to someone and they don't speak your language, you don't speak their language, you don't have any way to translate, that could lead to confusion.
Well, so they were no longer able to complete the tower.
Well, clearly.
Which makes sense because they can no longer talk to each other. So they scattered across the earth as God wished. So I imagine that they probably kind of like would put up their hand and say, who understands me? And then whoever understood them would kind of make a little group. Hopefully they're not just getting scattered one by one, because that would be even more terrifying in this confusing mess that's going on.
Yes.
But we have this verb scatter, and to scatter just means to spread out or to make something spread out in all different directions in kind of like maybe a no kind of pattern, just kind of like go in all the different directions. So nobody understands what anybody's saying. So for some reason, rather than just saying maybe we should all stay here and try to figure this out, they decided we're all going to just leave and go some other place. And so they scattered throughout the world. And our example sentence says, the wind began to scatter leaves across the garden. Maybe you had just raked them all nicely into a pile. The wind comes and blows them all in every different direction again, and making you have to start over.
Yeah, so everyone spread out, got away from all the other people they can understand, and they went off to the different corners of the world. The scattered groups took their new languages. I'm Italian, I'm out of here. I'm Portuguese, I'm Japanese, I'm headed this way. They took their new languages with them and formed new nations with their own unique cultures. That one culture of Shinar that sort of came from Noah and his children's children was gone, and now everyone is all over the place with different languages, different culture, and everything kind of different. So this was very unique. There are all these unique cultures, unique languages, unique foods, unique religions, all that kind of stuff. If something is unique, it is special and individual and unlike others, okay? If you make something by hand, you can probably make it to be quite unique, quite different from anything anyone has ever made, even different from something you've made because you can change it. However, if you go to a big store where most of us buy stuff, something I buy in the store is exactly the same as something you buy. They're made in a factory. They are not unique. But your personality, though, that can be very unique. Everyone is different. Everyone has different ideas and different experiences, which is nice. For example, Veronica's writing style is very unique and full of personality. In other words, no one writes like Veronica. And no one teaches English like Hanny.
人们失去了共同的语言，城市陷入混乱，他们再也无法完成那座高塔。于是呢，人们就像上帝所希望的那样，四散到世界各地了。那分散的群体就带着新的语言，形成了具有自己独特文化的国度。好，单字 confusion 这个名词表示混乱、混淆或困惑。Scatter 这个动词则表示分散，使分散散布在各处。Unique 则是形容独特的、独一无二的。好，这句话课文中。
And we are back. So we're going to take a little break here because it's the second part of the article. We're going to have to find out what happens after all of this confusion and the spreading of the people of Shinar to, well, every which way. So let's find out.
In the end, the tower was never finished, and the city was left behind and forgotten. We now call this story the Tower of Babel because Babel suggests confusion. To this day, the tale of the tower reminds us about the dangers of the desire for power. But the story also teaches us an important lesson. It is good to work together and be strong, but we must never forget to stay humble.
All right, well, God's plan kind of worked out. He got everyone to leave the land of Shinar, and the Tower of Babel, I guess, was abandoned. They just, maybe that's why it didn't fall over. They just never finished it. or something. So let's find out how this story wraps up as we get to the end.
Yes, and so it says, in the end, the tower was never finished, and the city was left behind and forgotten.
Wow, everybody left.
Yeah, I was going to say, wouldn't like maybe one group of languages want to stay in there?
Yeah, and then move into the tower.
Yeah.
It's a half a tower, but still.
Well, apparently they decided not to. And it says, we now call this story the Tower of Babel because Babel suggests confusion. Ah, yes, because we were trying to think, well, why wouldn't they call this the Tower of Shinar? Well, maybe at the time they did call it that. And now later on, after the fact, they say, now we're going to call this the Tower of Babel to say that everybody was confused when they were building this tower. Yes, and so we had this verb suggest in our sentence, and it's to suggest something is to give some advice or give a way or a plan for doing something to someone else. So maybe they're not so sure how to handle this problem that they have. So you could suggest, maybe you should do it this way or do it that way. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to follow it, but you kind of give this advice or something like that. Here we have that used kind of a little bit differently where it says Babel, the word suggests confusion. Basically, it's being used in the way of that's sort of the definition of the word Babel. Maybe not an exact translation because this is a very old word, but the meaning behind that is something to do with confusion. So we're using suggests in kind of the way of saying this word suggests this definition.
Okay, it kind of hints or leads us to that thing.
Yes, and so then our example sentence said, her expression suggested that she wasn't happy. Wow. So again, this is kind of used in a similar way where it's not like she's saying anything, but if you look at her expression, you can kind of get to the idea that she's not so happy.
Okay, it's giving us a hint. Like if I see the word luxury, that suggests that something will be expensive. It might not, but it gives you that idea, although I'm not saying it clearly. So I can see that the time, it suggests that maybe is now a good time to go to Teacher Hanny. I think so, yeah. Let's check it out.
最后那座塔没能完成，而那座城市也被抛弃遗忘了。我们现在把这个故事称为巴别塔，因为巴别这个字就是表达混乱的意思。那单字 suggest 这个动词表示暗示、表示，那么后面可以接名词或是接 that 子句，这个 that 可以省略。而这个段落有出现另一个跟 and 有关的片语 in the end， 它表示最后、最终。举例来说。In the end, they gave up the idea. 最后呢，他们放弃了那个想法。好，这回课文中。
Okay, we are back. So to this day, back in our article, to this day, up until now, from ancient times when this story happened, to this day, or into the modern world, to this day, the tale of the tower reminds us about the dangers of the desire for power. Don't get too big for your boots. In other words, the dangers of the desire for power. It's not good to try to be too ambitious or try to do too much stuff because God is watching you. So this reminds us of this idea. To remind is basically to bring something that you know back into your mind, to kind of bring it back, to get you to think about it again. In other words, to not forget something. So if there's something important and I don't want to forget it, I might ask Sam or a friend or someone to remind me, hey, don't forget you have to go to the dentist on Friday, or, oh yeah, right, I almost forgot that. You can write things down to remind yourself. You can put a note. I sometimes put an elastic band around my wrist. Why do I? Oh yeah, I have to take the garbage out tonight. I don't want to forget that. It reminds you, it brings it back to your mind because it's important. For example, please remind Alec to bring his book tomorrow. You know Alec, always forgetting his books and his shoes and other things.
Forgetting his shoes.
Yeah, he's a very, very forgetful man.
Oh man, okay.
Yes.
So this story was meant to remind us not to desire power too much. And if you desire something, or the desire of, in this case it's being used as the noun, but first I'll describe the verb. If you desire something, then you want that. You want it almost more than like anything else. It's just like, that is my desire. Now the noun version. If that is your desire, desire, that is the thing that you're looking for, that is the thing that you want, and it doesn't really matter what you're going to do to get to it, you just want to get to that end thing. It could be an actual physical thing, like you desire to own this sports car. It could be power, it could be money, it could be a successful life, it could be happiness. You could desire happiness above all else, and then you might not care as much about what you wear or what you look like or something like that. So in our example sentence, it says, both countries shared a desire for peace. So both countries are looking for peace. They want to make that happen. Now they just need to figure out how to reach and accomplish that desire. And if we go back to the story, it says, but the story also teaches us an important lesson. It is good to work together and be strong, but we must never forget to stay humble. Again, playing into the idea that when they were working on the tower, they were starting to get a little bit full of themselves, which means that they had a lot of pride and were like, hey, we are the best. We're the best ever. Everybody else is terrible, but we are the best. Well, God didn't really like that.
That is absolutely true. All right, let's go over to someone who always stays humble, even though she's amazing. Hanny.
课文最后提到，直到今天，巴别塔的故事提醒我们渴望权力的危险，那也教导我们重要一课，就是齐心协力、坚强起来是好事，但永远不能忘记保持谦虚。好，单字 remind 这个动词表示使想起或提醒。Desire 在文中当名词，表示渴望、欲望。那刚刚说齐心协力、坚强起来是好事，这时候文中用到句型是It is 形容词加不定词 to be 表达做某事是怎么样的。那这个 it 是虚主词，真正的主词是后面的不定词片语 to be。那你可以在 to be 的前面加上 for somebody 来指出对象。例如 It is natural for parents to worry about their children。父母担心孩子是很自然的事。介华课文中。
All right, we are back with our what do you think question before we say bye-bye for today. So what do you think? Do you think God was right to stop the people from completing the tower?
Well, this is kind of a funny question. I feel like, are we ever allowed to say God was right or wrong?
True. You don't want to get hit by a lightning bolt by saying God would totally mess this up.
Yes, but I would say as kind of like a little bit of a funny way to answer this question, I will say he was right to stop them, because if he hadn't stopped them, then maybe we wouldn't have different cultures and languages in the world. So I would say, and if that's like a real direct story, then that would be kind of a funny way to say, yeah, we wanted different languages and cultures. So that was good.
That's true. Different languages and cultures are good. But maybe he was wrong, because if we all had one language, maybe we wouldn't have misunderstanding in the world, right? Everyone would understand each other better. It is an interesting question with an interesting story behind it. So thanks for joining us today, guys. Take care of yourselves, each other, and your towers, but don't build them too big. And we'll be back very, very soon with more good stuff. Until then, bye-bye.
Before long, God put an end to the plans of the people of Shinar. Suddenly, as the workers were building, they could no longer understand one another. One person would speak, but the others would find his language unfamiliar. God took action by taking away their common language. The city fell into confusion as people tried to find others who spoke the same language, but it was too late. They were no longer able to complete the tower, so they scattered across the earth as God wished. The scattered groups took their new languages with them and formed new nations with their own unique cultures. In the end, the tower was never finished, and the city was left behind and forgotten. We now call this story the Tower of Babel because Babel suggests confusion. To this day, the tale of the tower reminds us about the dangers of the desire for power. But the story also teaches us an important lesson. It is good to work together and be strong, but we must never forget to stay humble.
最后，我们来复习今天课文里的单字文法。单字的部分有 scatter， 它是动词，表示分散，使分散散布在各处。 第二个，我们学到 unique， 它是形容词，形容独特的、独一无二的。那么 suggest 这个动词表示暗示 ，remind 则表示使想起、提醒，也是个动词。那再学到是 desire， 它当名词表示渴望、欲望。而文法的部分，我们第一个学到跟 and 有关的片语，我们学到 put an end 或者是 bring an end to something， 这是表达使什么终止、结束，或是为什么画下句点。我们还学到 in the end， 它表示最后、最终。第二个文法重点学到 find 加受词，后面可以接形容词 VING 或 PP 来表达发现处于某种状态。那受词补语用 VING 表示主动或正在进行的动作 ，PP 表示被动或者是已完成的动作。第三个，我们学到句型 it is 形容词 to 加原形动词，这表示做某事是怎么样的。那 to V 前面还可以加 for somebody 来指出对象。那么以上是今天的讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
If you're someone who enjoys physical activities, then you probably like working out. Working out is another way to say exercising, which is a physical activity that can improve your health and mood. Experts say you should aim to work out at least 300 minutes per week, and today's location is the perfect place for you to get your workout in, the Sanchong Civil Sports Center. Sanchong Civil Sports Center is a great place to work out. It has a swimming pool, ball court, exercise room, and more inside. Lots of popular classes are provided, such as dancing and spinning. The center often holds events. During certain hours, those over 65 can use parts of the sports center for free. The center has even created days just for women. There are free trial classes for women, and they can use certain facilities for free. Swimming classes only for women are also available. Sanchong Civil Sports Center hopes that with exercise and fun classes, people can develop healthy habits for life. Nothing feels better than a nice workout. And with so many different types of physical activities available at Sanchong Civil Sports Center, why wouldn't you want to go?